Hello, Jill. I'm with the Guardian Liberty Voice, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your book and yoga. And let's see, the name. What was the name of your book again, ma'am?
It's called Extra Love.
And it's about yoga assists, right?
It's about yoga assistance. It's actually a little more than that.
Well, okay.
It's a book that is aimed at teachers and students to help work with correct alignment
Okay, so
and
you have hands-on.
prevent injuries when practicing yoga.
Okay, so you are really an advocate of doing yoga, but in the correct way, so people don't get injured, right? And so
That's right.
if that
That's
means that people assist, then
right.
well, that's the best way to do it sometimes, right? The healthiest way.
That's right.
And where are you based, Jill?
Well, I'm based in San Francisco, California, and I travel frequently between East Coast and West Coast to teach. I train teachers, and I also teach group classes and private lessons.
And yoga is pretty popular these days. It has been really for centuries, actually, well, or longer. But it is a huge fitness trend. And what would you say are some of the more important trends or more popular trends these days?
Well, yoga is popular. You're right, and our trade industry reports that about 20 million Americans practice yoga today, and that number just keeps it almost keeps growing exponentially every few years. And what's interesting is that of the 20 million people, nearly half of them consider themselves beginners. So nearly half of the 20 million people practicing are just kind of like coming to yoga maybe for the first time, or maybe coming from different fitness regimes and different sports and athletics. So it's really a wonderful growth stage for our industry. And many people come to yoga for different reasons. They might want to improve their strength or their flexibility. They might want to improve their overall conditioning. For example, I started yoga about 25 years ago, almost like as cross training, because I was very athletic, doing a lot of dancing, playing a lot of tennis, and I found that yoga had just like really great conditioning benefits for me. And then, of course, many people, myself included, are interested and passionate about yoga as a spiritual practice and as a way to kind of calm the mind and feel a connection to something larger. Tapping into the deep spiritual history and the ancient texts of yoga that are just very rich as far as personal development and personal growth.
What prompted you to write the book Extra Love?
Well, this is an interesting story. I as I said, I've been practicing myself for about 25 years, and really got interested in it. And I started teaching 14 years ago. I did a series of teacher trainings in various schools, and have achieved a pretty high level of certification and high level of expertise. And I noticed about 8 or 9 years ago that there didn't seem to be a lot of resources for students and teachers in alignment and in working safely, and in another particular sort of niche area, which is hands-on support. And the hands-on support can really make all the difference in the world for yoga students, regardless of levels. The name of the book, Extra Love, this came from San Francisco. So I moved out to the West Coast from the East Coast about 5 years ago, and people would come to me before class, before I went to teach, and they would say, "Oh, like this is a very California thing," but they would
That's not
say,
a code
"Oh,
word, is it?
are you going to give me some of that extra love tonight or extra love today?" And by that, they were referring to, this would be before class, kind of in the dressing room or in the lobby. And being an East Coaster, I kind of didn't get that at first, but what they meant was personalized attention, and could be hands-on attention, or it could just be a personalized touch where you're really trying to customize the instruction or the correction for the individual student. This is very, very important. So they would ask me this question, "You could give me some of that extra love," and I figured out what it meant. And then a couple of years later, when I wrote the book, that was the title. The book is a real wonderful resource. I did the first volume, and I took it to a big trade show, a big industry trade show of yoga teachers, and I completely sold out. This was in 2011. And so I knew I was onto something. I knew the way the material was presented was very effective, and there were photographs, and I was very thoughtful about how I laid out the material. And then a year later, I finished a second volume. So it's a continuation on the first book. Some material repeats, but it's all new material as far as the curriculum in the second volume. And I had a very similar reception. Students and teachers just found it very helpful. They like the attention to detail. They really like the angle of how to work safely, how to work smart. And so I've just been going on from there, teaching and promoting the books.
Unfortunately, people might be not doing yoga the right way, and if they get injured, then it can give yoga a bad name. But if it's done correctly, you can reduce the injuries quite a bit, right?
This is absolutely true. It's one of these exercise regimes, yoga, that it's treated a little bit like other types of group fitness classes. Like, let's say you go to a step aerobics class, or maybe you go to a Zumba class or something like that at the gym. Most gyms and yoga studios assume some prior knowledge, maybe, or some sort of reference point. But back to what I was saying earlier, many people are coming to yoga relatively new. They might be coming midlife, or after raising a family, or having a busy career. So it's important that we work safely, and it's important that we try to give great instruction to students so that they can avoid injury. Most people truly, come to class, from my experience, or coming to a mixed levels class, for example, and they come into class, and there's a good percentage of the students in the class who have no idea what's going on. They're newer, they don't really have their feet wet yet, and
Well, yeah,
it's really important to learn the details and learn how to work safely.
Even like different names for different styles of yoga. Which style is it that you in particular specialize in?
Yes, I specialize in a couple different styles of yoga. The first teacher training I did was in basic Hatha yoga, Hatha, and that's kind of an umbrella term for all of the physical practices of yoga, Hatha yoga. It's a general term, sometimes refers to sort of classical yoga. And then a couple of years after that, I specialized a little bit more. I did some training in what's called Ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga is a Sanskrit term. It means 8 limbs. It's a reference to yoga philosophy, and then it's also a very well-regarded, world-renowned style of yoga that came directly out of India. It's a vigorous style. It's dynamic, good for athletic type of practitioners. And then 2 styles that were sort of closely related to Ashtanga. One is called Vinyasa. And this is a flowing style of yoga that's getting real popular in the yoga studios and even in the gyms. The way it works is that you do poses, but all the poses are sort of interconnected. And they're interconnected by the breath. It can be a little bit of an aerobic workout. It can be rigorous. And this is Vinyasa yoga. So I have quite a bit of experience there. And then my last training, where I'm advanced certified, is a school called Jivamukti. And Jivamukti is headquartered in New York City. We have studios all over the world. It's a vinyasa-based practice, but we also have beginners classes as well, other types of classes. And this is a style of yoga that is rigorous, dynamic, very beautiful, with a big emphasis on the spiritual teachings of yoga. So I'm multidimensional. I think that's one. I think one of the selling points to my training and my books is that I'm coming at it from a variety of disciplines. I didn't just train in one school and say, okay, that's it. But I do offer insight and experience that are drawing from multiple styles of yoga, many master teachers that I've studied with. And also, I've come to yoga from a diverse background of also sports. So I mentioned that I played tennis as a kid, started playing tennis when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I grew up in Florida, and all the kids played tennis back then in the late 60s, early 70s. And still play tennis today, but I'm also a classically trained ballet dancer. I've been dancing for about 35 years. So I've done that alongside of yoga. So my knowledge of the body and kinesiology, proper alignment and form is just formed from many years of athletics and sports. I'm also a huge sports fan too, baseball and football.
Well, it's I have maybe one more question.
Oh, that's a whole other detour right there.
Running out of time a little bit, but I've really enjoyed speaking with you and learning more about yoga. And but I wondered, like, where could people get a copy of your book, Extra Love?
Well, the books are on Amazon.com, and they're easy to find. You can just search under my name, or you could search under yoga and the title. Really easy to find. Many reader reviews already, and so it's easy to find. And the books have beautiful covers. They were designed in San Francisco. The volume 1 has a bright yellow cover, and the volume 2 is a bright pink cover with a similar design. So they're on Amazon. And my website is yogaofliberation.com, altogether, yogaofliberation.com. And I've also hear from people all over the world, maybe who don't have access to Amazon, and I can send the books to people directly as well.
Talking to you more in the future, but just one last thing. What would you? So the audience of these books are not just for teachers necessarily, right? They're for, but they are also for teachers. Is that right? Like, okay.
And for students, it's really a book that's going to be useful to anyone who practices yoga, who wants to practice with right alignment, the right form, and wants a sustainable, safe practice for a lifetime. For teachers, what I'm hearing from those who have bought the book and who are using them, they've found it to be a really invaluable tool for their own teaching, their own instruction. But I've also heard from a lot of yoga students who like the way the book breaks down levels of detail. There's a separate section on different poses. The most popular poses are covered in each book in sections, and students really like the way the poses are broken down in detail, breaking down the alignment and the correct form for the poses. So I think it's really
Jill,
serving
and,
both audiences in a nice way.
Looking forward, like I said, to talking to you more in the future, and I'm sure everybody that reads the Guardian Liberty Voice will be very interested in listening to the interview and reading more about yoga and your book. And so, well, that's all for now. But I'm really glad to have met you and talked with you, Jill.